All right. Here are the guidance document updates as of today, and I'll just leave this on the screen for a few moments if anybody would like to take a screenshot of that. All right. And first up, we have Elias Thomas with filing applications to amend OGDPs. Take it away, Elias.
Thank you, Tyler. Hello, everyone. I'm Elias Thomas, the hearings manager here at ECMC. I have a very brief one-slide presentation to discuss a process when filing applications to amend previously approved OGDPs. Let me go ahead and share my slide here. All right, hopefully everyone can see this. We discussed this with ECMC staff to ensure that anything that needs a hearing application to amend a previously approved OGDP, we just want to ensure consistency between the systems, make it easy for staff and for hearings to track these things in the best way possible, and also to process them effectively. So I've just outlined a couple of steps that will help hearings and staff do so. First, always confer with staff, of course, as to what needs to be filed and whether a hearing application to amend an OGDP is required. If that is required, we ask that the operator file the application under the same docket number for the original OGDP application. That just ensures we have a single docket tracking any changes to the OGDP, and it's a more convenient organizational track for us and for staff. Once that's done, please notify the hearing officer that was assigned to the original OGDP. That should be evident in the e-filing system. We generally get notifications for everything filed, but not for dockets that have been complete or older dockets. So we would not get a notification from the e-filing system for anything filed in a previously approved OGDP, which is why we need the notice. Once we get that notice, we can move that docket and change its status, and we would start to get notices moving forward on that. So notifying the hearing officer allows us to do that, and also allows the hearing officer to contact everyone in staff to go ahead and ensure that that application is timely reviewed. We just want to make sure this process moves as smoothly as our other OGDP applications. And so this is what we've laid out, very basic, but wanted to remind everyone of the process. That is really all I have. Unfortunately, I cannot stay to the end of today's operator meeting, but I appreciate everyone's time. And if you have questions, please feel free to email me. And thank you again.
Thank you, Elias. Up next, we have John Noto with Rule 301C, changes to approved oil and gas development plans.
Good morning. I'm John Noto, one of the location assessment supervisors. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Tyler?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Okay. I'll go ahead and share a screen. Okay. And can you see my shared screen?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll start. Yeah, I wanted to touch base on Rule 301C. As this rule has still been a bit of a challenge at times, and wanted to make sure that we were able to help out with that and provide a reminder. Just a sec. And let me try and advance this. And so thanks for your patience as I maneuver through this. Stop the share. And for some reason, I'm having trouble advancing my slide when I'm in the share mode. Okay, I'll try again. Okay, I think I got it now. So we'll start with the rule, because I think it's helpful to it's rather short, but it's very direct as far as what we require for a change to an OGDP. And that rule clearly states for any proposed change to an approved oil and gas development plan, the operator will provide a Form 4. Another helpful aspect here of our rules that I refer to quite often is a statement of basis and purpose. And just as a reminder, since I don't think we've gone over this lately, the way that you get to that is on the main page. You go to the regulation and rules, and it's under older rules. And at the bottom, you can get to the statement of basis and purpose. And the SBP kind of fleshes things out and explains things better for some of our rules that are kind of sparse in their language. And I won't read the whole thing, but there is some additional information I think that's helpful if you refer to this. Okay, as far as the process goes, once again, Rule 301C applies to any change to an OGDP. Please feel free to contact us for guidance before submitting a sundry if you'd like. Ultimately, the change may require an amended Form 2A or a Form 2.4 or a Form 4. And if we do require a Form 2A, it can be submitted as an amendment to the OGDP. So the first part of this is that the operator submits Form 4 for the OGDP with the description of the proposed change. The OGDP sundry is strictly for the OGDP, so it should not have any attachments for the oil and gas location. We will post the sundry for 14 days with an announcement on the home page. And please include enough information on the sundry so that a reader from the outside can understand what that change is. And also include enough time for that 14-day administrative process, as we've seen some operators get in a bind in that area. Okay. So the next step is Form 4 sundry for the location. This sundry is the sundry that will have all the information for updating the location file. So please, you can work with us once again to make sure that we get the correct information, and it will be reviewed and posted. And we'll take questions at the end, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And yes, we will address all Q&A at the end of all presentations. All right, and next up we have Mike Leonard with a move-in rig notice.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. Mike Leonard, Compliance Unit Manager. This is just kind of a reminder and a request. Excuse me. On move-in and rig-up notices, please give a brief description on the 42 as to why that move-in rig-up's being done. You know, for instance, pump change, especially if you're coming back on a plugging operation that you haven't finished and you're moving back into it. Put something, you know, along the lines of return to plugging operation. It gives us an idea of what you're doing and makes, you know, kind of tracks the history of that operation. Also, notice of plugging and notice of spud are separate notices for move-in rig up. You can have notice of spud after. Typically, it's after notice of move-in rig up. Notice of plugging should come before the move-in rig up notice. That's really all I had, and we can take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Up next is Chris Eisinger with a Form 3A update. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Tyler. Good morning, everyone. My update is also very quick, and I just wanted to share some modifications we made to the Form 3A. And the first one, and these are all fairly minor changes, but I just, again, want to make people aware of them. The first is for the adding new instruments using the Form 3A. The bond type has been removed, and previously we had asked operators to specify a bond type. This would be like plugging, surface owner protection bond, bond type for gas facility. And this created a little bit of confusion at times for operators. And so we realized we could have this be assigned based upon what rules are being covered by a particular instrument. So that no longer appears when you go to add an instrument. You don't need to put that in, and it will be assigned when the Form 3A is approved. The second modification is some operators pointed out to us that as option 3 or 4 operators, there are times when they wanted to allocate more than their annual contribution amount, and the form was not allowing that to happen. So that has now been fixed, and one can allocate more financial assurance than just the contribution amount up to the full amount that's due. Then the last sort of just change is a suite of changes, and they're updates to the user interface, including information, more information and tooltips. We think a better way to edit amounts when you are adding new instruments. And then there's just been a cleanup in the display. So that's really it. And with regards to the Form 3A and questions, we continue to work through them. And if you have questions, please reach out to financial assurance staff. The other announcement I had for folks is not related to the Form 3A. This is just really a reminder. And this came up recently at the end of April when we had an issue with our old website certificate no longer being valid. And it prompted a response from quite a few people. And this is that we need to ask people if you have any bookmarks to our old site, so cogcc.state.co.us, please update those to ecmc.state.co.us. Additionally, if you are working with any guidance documents, or you are linking to something, or finding a web page on our site that has a link to the old COGCC site. We are working to try to update all those. But if you should find a problem and get an error about the site cannot be reached, you should try just changing COGCC to ECMC. And oftentimes that will fix the problem. So those are my announcements. Thank you, Tyler. And we'll answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Chris. All right, and up next is Byron Gale and Aaron Katz with Bradenhead monitoring, testing, and reporting discussion.
Yeah, good morning. Byron Gale, the West Engineering Supervisor for ECMC. Aaron will be doing much of the presenting, and so give him a moment to share his screen. But we wanted to put up a discussion on Bradenhead monitoring, testing, and reporting this morning for a variety of reasons. Aaron, if you go to the next slide. First of all, I wanted to mention that everything in this presentation is directly tied to rules 419 and 420 and the various Bradenhead guidance documents all on our website. So everything comes from that source. But some of the reasons we wanted to tee up this conversation, I'm just really setting the stage for Aaron. I'll just hit on these first two bullets. In the spirit of continuous improvement, we do want to strive to improve compliance with rules and regulations and support operators in their effort to do that. And in terms of that compliance, specifically, I'm talking about the actual monitoring, the testing, and the reporting, but also the diagnostics, and then submitting pressure management plans for each and every well that's over threshold pressure. Aaron will go into more detail on that. We also want to strive for consistency across the state. We know we have a lot of operators, several basins, different geologies, different wellbore construction designs, different pressures. But yet, again, when it comes to consistency, I'm talking specifically about the reporting, the approach to diagnostic testing, and then submitting Bradenhead pressure management plans on a Form 4 sundry. And Aaron will have more on the diagnostics specifically and those PMPs. So Aaron, if you could go to the next slide. The reason this is important is because between the MIT program and the Bradenhead monitoring and reporting program, arguably those two programs are perhaps the best means for industry to demonstrate that we're protecting groundwater and the environment. And of course, this is all part of the wellbore integrity rulemaking from 2019, Senate Bill 181, which is signed into effect by the governor. But that all being said, we're not quite where we want to be. And that's really the purpose of this presentation. So looking back over the last 2 years, we noticed that NOAVs associated with insufficient Bradenhead monitoring, testing, and reporting is perhaps the most common, yet I believe the most preventable of violations. When we look back over the last 2 years, 111 Bradenhead related NOAVs issued, which represents 30% of all NOAVs. Far too many, in my opinion. Something that we can work together to improve upon. It's a very straightforward regulation. In fact, you'll see content even repeated as Aaron goes through it. It's a very simple regulation, but yet the most common occurrence is just failure to report, say, an annual test, or to take the appropriate action when Bradenhead pressure is over the action level. So again, very common NOAV, but very preventable violation, we hope. And so we hope walking through this information might be, for most company operators, a good reminder, a good refresher on the regulation and what the expectations are. But what we're also hoping for is your questions toward the end. We kept this presentation very brief. We couldn't cover all scenarios, so really counting on your questions. We have the engineering staff on the call as well, including Diane McCoy, Diane Byrne, to help answer any questions on unique situations or specific scenarios. So we do want to we encourage you to ask questions in the chat, and we'll pick those up toward the end. So with that, turn it over to Aaron Katz. So Aaron's the area engineer for the West Slope, and he'll walk us through some of the detail that I provided the overview on. Aaron?
Thank you, Byron. I appreciate your help with this and appreciate the introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking your time to attend this presentation with Byron and I. My name is Aaron Katz. I'm the area engineer in the western part of the state, primarily over the Piceance Basin and its surrounding areas. I work with under Byron, and we work on the western engineering team as a part of the greater engineering team. The Bradenhead rules that are found in rules 419 and 420. Some of the key elements of rule 419 are found here on the slide and summarized. On the Form 4 sundry, which I'll get to in a little bit, and kind of jumping ahead, we'll have you summarize a lot of this information. But for all wells in the state, it's required to monitor and record production casing pressure and all annular casing pressures on a monthly basis. Wells that exceed 30% of the surface casing depth and or a lower threshold set by the commission, or if they flow liquid or continuous gas, those are required to be submitted on a Form 17. And once that test is completed, it should be submitted within 10 days. You should take immediate action to remedy that annular pressure, and then start performing diagnostic testing to determine if that pressure is sustained. When you submit that sundry from completing diagnostic testing, we ask that you please describe how that pressure has exceeded the threshold, include those diagnostic test results, sampling, and future plans for more frequent monitoring, pressure mitigation, and or remedial well work that you plan on doing. I'll be talking more specifically to these points throughout our presentation, so I'm going to add more details as we go on. Speaking to monthly Bradenhead monitoring, when we monitor the Bradenhead pressure monthly, we check those pressures, we record the data, and we maintain those records for a minimum of 5 years. For wells with Bradenhead pressure that exceed, or you read that they exceed that threshold during the monthly monitoring, you'll perform a Bradenhead test and submit those results on a Form 17. Mitigate the pressure, perform diagnostic testing to determine if that annular casing pressure is sustained, and submit this information on Form 4 within 60 days. And I'll speak to the specifics of diagnostic testing and what to include on the Form 4 Bradenhead plan in a few slides. On an annual basis, testing is completed once a calendar year on all strings within 9 to 12 months of that previous year's test. These results should be submitted on a Form 17 within 10 days, or if wells meet the criteria, they can be submitted via bulk upload data by the 15th of the month following the test month. If applicable, an updated wellbore diagram should be attached to that Form 17. So if you've had any changes from the previous year, you've done any well work, and or this is an ongoing effort to update all our well files as we work through getting wellbore diagrams into well files that have previously did not have one. So please take a look at your well files as you're submitting your annual braidhead test. And if there isn't a wellbore diagram, please attach one to a Form 17. And in that, manner, speaking to kind of some of the, you're not able to attach wellbore diagrams to a bulk upload, so you'll have to do that on a Form 17. For any pressure greater than 0 psi observed in the intermediate casing annulus, the operator is required to contact that area engineer. So when you complete a braidhead test report, and you complete, it's really helpful to have comments on that Form 17. To kind of summarize it, the comment section should help answer the question, why is this Form 17 being submitted? If there's no comment on there, it is hard to discern between whether that were an annual test or potentially a pre-P&A test. So some suggestions for comments to include on a Form 17 are annual test, wellbore diagram attached, pre-P&A braidhead test, a rig release test, first test since initial production, or comments related to 7-day shut-in period. When performing braidhead test, operators should be prepared to collect samples of the braidhead gas and liquid and production gas for analysis. When the braidhead exceeds the threshold pressure, the proposed plan is an abatement system, such as tying into the sales line or a MESCO unit, and or there is liquid flow. There are just a few examples. These are just a few examples that constitute the need for sampling, and it's not an all-encompassing list. So there are other and many more situations that will constitute the need to sample a well. Sampling results should be submitted on a Form 43 and included in a Form 4 braidhead plan sundry when you submit those. This is a flow diagram summarizing what we've been talking about and in reporting timeline expectations for what's completed. In a general sense, I'm going to talk through the process if I were to test a well that shows an initial pressure reading that exceeds 30% of the surface casing TVD. Upon initial inspection of the well, I noticed that the pressure exceeds the threshold, so I'm going to be prepared to complete a Form 17 and gather a braidhead and production gas sample. After I complete the test, I'm going to submit those results on a Form 17 within 10 days with comments noting the pressure exceedance, samples were collected, and that diagnostics have been initiated. Within 60 days following the braidhead test, additional diagnostics are going to be completed to determine the source and cause of the pressure. Some of that might include a CBL, a wellbore review, additional braidhead tests, a noise log, and or some sample analysis. And I'm going to speak a little more in the following slide to additional diagnostic testing. The sample analysis should also be submitted separately on a Form 43 as well as on the braidhead plan. All this information should be summarized and include a plan to manage the pressure based on all that diagnostic information. So we're asking you to collect all this diagnostic information, process it, and then propose a plan that's tailored to this well based on that information and what you find on a well by well basis, because not all solutions are suited for all wells, all basins, and or depths in a wellbore that you find you might have an issue. Speaking a little more to some different points, is this diagram speaks to a few different things. During annual testing, all wells must be reported to the ECMC. So whether that well exceeds threshold or not, all annual tests are submitted to us. Wells below their threshold, wells below their pressure threshold do not require action during monthly monitoring, but that's only monthly monitoring. During annual testing, we do want that data and they must be reported. All braidhead data records must be kept for a minimum of 5 years. So let's get into talking to diagnostic testing. Diagnostic testing is the key factor in determining if braidhead pressure is sustained and provides a crucial amount of information to determine a tailored solution for that well. The objective of diagnostic testing is to determine proper wellbore isolation is present, the source of the fluids in the annulus, and the appropriate mitigation or remediation options for that specific situation. The operator is encouraged to perform tests that demonstrate conclusive results with a single test and or multiple lines of evidence. So here on the right, you can see some different tests and or evaluations that can be completed. These are all listed in our guidance document, but some of them include an echometer test, running a new CBL, a noise log, sampling that we've talked about, pressure bleed down and buildup tests. And so through a combination of these and or one or two, you can determine what the source and cause of your gas is and then determine a solution. And all that information will be presented to us and submitted to the ECMC on a Form 4, supporting your plan to mitigate and solve that pressure-related issue. So getting into that Bradenhead plan that we were talking about and where we're going to summarize all the results of our diagnostics testing. A Form 4 Bradenhead plan should include a robust analysis of the wellbore to determine the source and cause of the pressure or the fluid flow. The sundry should include analysis of wellbore construction, gas and fluid samples, flow rates, a full wellbore analysis, remediation options, area-specific information. And so a lot of throughout basins and across the state, there's different geology and how that plays into Bradenhead pressure and is different. So please speak to the geology and or the wellbore, and even the formations that you're accessing are going to be different throughout the state and or a basin, and that changes what your Bradenhead mitigation options are. If your area has stray gas, please provide geologic information and evidence of that. And say you're, saying you have stray gas in the area, but if you have cement into your previous casing, then you don't exactly have a stray gas issue there. You have a wellbore integrity issue because you have gas getting up through, in some fashion, through your cement column. So that doesn't exactly explain the diagnostics or the information relying what the source of the problem is. So with that, excuse me.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I would just add one more final point, is kind of back to that first slide. We're really trying to support operators and improve compliance and strive for consistency. So when we do monitor and report annually or monthly, that's actually where the work begins. If that pressure is above threshold or Bradenhead flows liquid or gas, Aaron has really stressed the importance of conducting that diagnostic testing, coming up with a mitigation plan, pressure management plan, if you will. We're not protecting groundwater and the environment until all of that is complete. So oftentimes we do our reporting and think we're done, but oftentimes above threshold, that's where the work begins. And that's really what we wanted to reinforce with this presentation.
Thank you, Byron.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Byron and Aaron. Up next is Scott Cuthbertson with an ECMC location inspection process update. Scott, we can't hear you.
Okay. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
Thanks. So I wanted to just provide you an update on our review of our inspection process, location inspection process, based on input from primarily staff, but also a number of operators and a really deep dive into the data. We have revised our inspection process used to guide the way we inspect locations. We believe the modified process will increase the efficacy of the inspection and make better use of both ECMC and operator resources. So the objective of our presentation is to show the results of a months-long audit of the efficacy of our location inspection process. The result is we do believe we have a process that needs to be improved to make better use of our resources. And I'll summarize our findings today and show you the modified process. So this is our current process. The short version is that every non-compliance results in the issuance of a corrective action in a field inspection report, which is then supposed to be addressed by a field inspection resolution report that is reviewed by the inspector and assigned one of 5 statuses, either approved, approved via an alternate means of inspection, approved pending reinspection, not approved, or if left blank, a null value is allowed by that field, which nulls are always really difficult to interpret in data. They are unclear, sometimes at best. In this case, this null, I think an auditor would interpret as meaning that at very least there has been no decision entered officially into the database regarding the resolution of that corrective action. The other quick observation that we made in this process is that by identifying all non-compliance as a corrective action, the process really doesn't enable us to assess priority. If everything is a corrective action, if everything's a priority, can anything really be a priority? There's also no opportunity in this current process to show the escalation of a non-compliance over time, which we believe is a valuable aspect to affect compliance. So there are a number of principles when it comes to processes. One cardinal rule is to not allow the process to be left uncompleted, especially by means of getting stuck in a do loop. And when we look at the statuses that we currently use to, I hate to use the word resolve, use to stop the FIRR review status, really only 3 result in a resolution. The approved including the approved by AMI, and the not approved. 2 of those resolve it in a positive way. 1 of those resolves it in a negative way, but all 3 resolve the process. The approved pending reinspection status is really just a do loop. I appreciate it means more to some people than it does to others, and it means different things to different people. But at the end of the day, an auditor, when they look at this value, would assign it a do loop status. And then null, or no ECMC decision is what we're interpreting nulls to mean, is by definition a failure to resolve the process. So the process we've got today really doesn't adhere to one of those primary principles in process design, and in that it leaves the opportunity for this process to be unresolved. This is exacerbated when you add the data to this table, and you can look at the bottom row. We've added all of the various types of CAs in here for color commentary, but really the bottom row is the bottom row. The bottom line is the bottom line. And the thing that pops out are these big red numbers, right? That 49% of the corrective actions reviewed. And this was based on our data from 2022, because that was the last complete year of data we had when we began this process. back in the fall of 23. So 49% of the CAs had a null value. 34% had the value of approved pending reinspection. And there were some, good reasons perhaps for the approved pending reinspection. And I want to just say that, this is not a critique of anyone's performance, either ECMCs or the operators. This really was an audit critique of the process itself. So whatever criticisms we might try to formulate, our focus is really on, do we have an effective process? At the end of the day, having only 18% of the processes really be resolved by the issuance of one of these three resolving statuses, I think any auditor would assign a failing grade to this process. So it was pretty clear to us that that there was opportunity to improve here. As we began to work through our analysis, we asked the question whether we had clearly enunciated an effective objective for our location inspection process. Where does this process fit in our overall mission? We, as a result, formulated a mission statement for this process that mimics our overall mission to minimize the impacts to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources by identifying substantive, we'll talk more about that word in just a minute, by identifying substantive issues and affecting voluntary compliance. A key to processes is always to identify what your outcome, what your desired outcome is, what your objective is. And in this case, our objective has always been to affect voluntary compliance. So this is our amended process. I'm going to walk through the key aspects, most of which will be ongoing points of calibration you will appreciate as I go through it. And I will say that today is really just meant as an introduction. I appreciate there are many more conversations that we need to have. We would be happy to respond to an invitation from a group or interested parties to sit down and walk through the details. Be happy to accommodate that. Feel free to reach out to Mike Leonard, Greg Duranlo, or myself, and we'll set up something as well. We also are open to you just emailing us your thoughts on the process, but there are a number of details still to work out. And so today really is just to begin the conversation, to make you aware of our commitment to change this process and kind of give you an overview. So the first term that needs some definition is the word substantive. There are two really critical terms when it comes to the world of administration. One is substantive and one is reasonable. Both are subjective, eye of the beholder terms. And for that reason, you really need to do your best to define what those terms mean in the context in which you're using them. In this context, the word substantive means something that a reasonably conscientious person would spend their budget to fix. So we're asking our inspectors to put themselves in the perspective of the business that's responsible for maintaining that site and ask the question, if I were the business manager, is this something that that I expect you to spend your budget to come up and fix? And to demonstrate our commitment to making sure that we resolve these processes well going forward, the second aspect of that definition of substantive is that I, as the inspector, am willing to adjust my inspection schedule to circle back and re-inspect when a CA tracker prompts me to do so. We'll talk more about that CA tracker in just a minute. So that's what we mean by the term substantive. We'll just note here that first category, that condition one, does include previously observed not substantive observations, but that become ongoing or pervasive, that the operator has been provided ample opportunity to address. So The fact that it's not substantive doesn't mean that it's not a non-compliance. It's still a non-compliance that needs to be addressed. We're just identifying it as not a substantive non-compliance at that time. If left unaddressed, those not substantive non-compliances could become substantive. All right, we still want things to be addressed, just in an effective way. If the observation is not substantive, then we are going to document the conditions of the inspection as a comment, including photographs and notes. If we determine that it is substantive, but that the action required to mitigate the non-compliance, if there's not a current or imminent impact, we're going to qualify the inspection as an observation, again with documents and photos. And if there is a current or imminent impact from the non-compliance, then that's when we will use the corrective action to designate the status of that non-compliance. There will be an appropriate response deadline. The CA will work just as it works today from that point forward. The inspector will use the field inspection report. If there are CAs, the operator should submit a field inspection resolution report, which will automatically be accepted into the COGIS system and marked as received. The operator is free to raise any issues regarding the field inspection report, communicate how the CA was resolved, or provide any other information they believe is appropriate as a part of their FIRR. All of the analysis that's currently being done, that's being done in the current process as part of the FIRR intake, is now being transferred to the reinspection process, which is where I'll spend the remainder of my time here. And so really another fundamental change in this revised process is our commitment to reinspect when a CA is issued. That does several things. It prevents the potential do loop of approved pending reinspection. It also ensures that every corrective action is resolved. And so key aspects of the reinspection are: the reinspection is prompted by a CA tracker. That CA tracker will be something that we build into our COGIS database. It will track either the submission of the FIRR or the CA deadline. And we'll use those two thresholds to feed that CA tracker. When the inspector gets prompted that a corrective action is ready for reinspection, that's when they will review all the information that's been submitted relative to that CA, including all the information in the FIRR, any other conversations they've had with the operator, by email or verbally or however, right? So that's when they will do their pre-inspection prep just like they do today, but they will do it. But all the other aspects of the FIRR will be included in that re-inspection preparation. If there's something in that information that the inspector and their supervisor recognize warrants a need to revise or rescind their corrective action, they will be allowed to do so. They'll have the ability to do that at that point, right? So if the FIRR makes an observation that, well, we don't actually own this location anymore, you need to update your database. Doesn't happen very often, but it happens from time to time on an individual well basis. The inspector can acknowledge that and rescind that CA and issue a CA for the appropriate operator, right? So all of the flexibility and responsibility to really inspect in the most effective way is within the inspector's purview. They are the ones who understand what's going on site and can make the best decisions about how to move forward. If in the inspector and their supervisor or whoever they want to consult with, they can reach out to the enforcement manager, they can reach out to me, they can reach out to whoever they need to reach out to to address questions that they're not comfortable with regarding information that's been provided pertaining to that corrective action. If, and then they have the ability at that point really to decide how to go forward, right? Is it an opportunity to re-engage with the operator? Is that the most effective path forward? Does it need to be referred to enforcement? And so that will all be done here as part of the corrective action reinspection. And so that's really the basis of the modified process. And I can't remember what else we have on the agenda, but I'll stop sharing and we'll go from there. Mike, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
I see a question in the chat that I just lost.
And I'm not sure, Tyler, are we ready? Are we at the end? Oh, we are at the end.
Yes, that was our final presentation. So we can move into the Q&A portion of the meeting. Let's see.
Oh,
And the first question we have would be for Byron and Aaron. Where would I find the Bradenhead bulk data upload option?
Good question. If you go to our Bradenhead guidance document, there's some links in the document. The bulk upload option is managed by a third party. It's called Rockwood LLC or EHS Data Monster. You can go to rockwoodllc.com, or if you look in our guidance document, there will be those their email and information.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next question is, where does approved pending inspection, not reinspection, fall on the inspection process? Are these falling into a quote unquote do loop as well? This is specific to Form 4 final reclamation sundries.
so that's like 3 different questions. The first part of the approved pending reinspection was placed in there for several reasons. One, and not enough information was submitted in the FIRR to approve or deny or anything else with the corrective action. I'm not sure how it's specific to Form 4 final reclamation sundries. That sundry is required before a final, when an operator is requesting a final reclamation inspection. Maybe we need a little bit more information on that.
Well, and if I understand the question, this change in process also applies to our reclamation inspections, right? It's all location-based inspections, both the compliance unit and it's primarily the compliance unit and the reclamation. And so, they are the two that use this particular process. And so it applies to both. The approved pending reinspection is going away for all location-based inspections. Greg, I see your hand up. Maybe I misstated something. Greg, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Greg, did you have your hand raised? Oh, one moment. I don't think I have Greg as a co-host.
Oh. Thanks, Tyler, for catching that.
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah, sorry, I was feeling rather helplessly muted there. So as I read that question, the approved pending inspection on a Form 4 sundry, that allows staff to approve the sundry, to bring that sundry into essentially into our system, acknowledge it for the record keeping purposes of the location file, but then acknowledges that you know, the sundry is typically saying, hey, I'm done with my reclamation, please come inspect. And so we're approving the sundry, and then we're going to inspect, and it's the final reclamation inspection that actually passes the location. So essentially it's a conditionally approved sundry that triggers that final reclamation inspection, or an interim reclamation inspection as well. But the sundry is submitted to essentially trigger the inspection, and then that's what we're approving. You've told us that you're ready, and we're going to go out there and do that inspection. So that's somewhat different process than what we're describing in the corrective action, you know, modifications to the location inspection. Hopefully that
thanks.
clears it up.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Now that I reread that question, I think that is the intention of the question. Thank you for catching that.
All right, thank you. Our next question is a little bit off of today's topics, but how will BLM's recent bonding rules affect ECMC's federal FA requirements?
So we're in the process right now of crosswalking. You know, our commission rules require us to evaluate the sufficiency of the federal required assurance in comparison to the ECMC required assurance. And then if the director finds that additional financial assurance is required above and beyond the federal financial assurance, then to communicate that to the operator. We are in the process of reviewing all of those federal wells in light of the revised BLM bonding rules, and so that's an active project right now.
Thank you, Scott. Next question is another one for Aaron and Byron. Could you describe the proper procedure for testing the Braden head?
Yeah, I'll talk to that in a bit of a general sense, as it's a bit of a, you know, there's a lot of specific steps into that. We actually have a specific document called Operator Instructions, Braden Head Testing and Reporting, that you can find on our website. And starting on page 3 through 5, there's a 15-step-by-step process that lays out the process for it. But and that, I think, is a really good resource for specific step-by-step instructions. But speaking to the general process, there's a shut-in period that all annuluses on your Braden head annuluses, intermediate annuluses will have on your wellbore. And then you'll conduct a Braden head test, and you'll put gauges on each of those annuluses and individually open them up for a 30-minute test, recording pressures and observations throughout that. And then following the test, you report those results to the ECMC. So that is a very broad and general description of what the Braden head procedure looks like, but please go look at the guidance document, as it has a well-written step-by-step process that will speak to each point and how to test. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next question. There's been a big issue with site inspections, weeds, and erosion. Then comes the words BMPs, but this is what I think is a good practice, although my inspector does not agree with this. Are there any resolutions?
So I think Scott touched on this in the presentation about when you submit an FIRR, if you're not agreeing with the findings, then you present that in the FIRR, and that'll be reviewed by the inspector and supervisor, possibly manager, or on up the line. I don't know if Greg, you wanted to weigh in on that as well.
No, Mike, I
And-
think you're exactly right. That does that is built into this process.
Yeah, I will just acknowledge that every process in the world requires constant calibration, right? And that happens at several levels. And so that's why communication is required. We have to be able to communicate and try to reach a calibrated sense of what we're going to accept and then go from there.
All right, thank you. Next question, is there an expected timeline for the final inspections to occur after the sundry has been submitted?
I'll take that one, please. Um, no, that's going to vary depending on when the sundry is received, what the, workload of the reclamation inspector is at the time. What the season, we want to obviously conduct those inspections at an optimal season. So, if it's submitted in the dead of winter, we probably won't go out and look at the snow and pass a final reclamation. We'll wait until we're in a growing season. So we try and address them in the next growing season.
Thank you, Greg. Our next question is, for any pressure greater than 0 psi observed in the intermediate casing annulus, the operator will contact the area engineer. Could someone explain that further?
Yeah, thanks for your question. So it is a wide ranging and obviously a broad spectrum there when anything above 0. And so it's a little hard to speak to it because it is on a case by case basis, but we want to tailor that solution to the well and the pressure of that specific well. So when it comes to intermediate casing pressure, we're going to take a look at what that braided test did, how it bled down, what that wellbore construction is, what the geology looks like, and take a look at all that diagnostic data as well as how it relates to your braided test and if there's any communication, and then determine what an effective solution is going forward from there. So the reason that we ask for contacting the area engineers so that we can work and tailor a solution specifically for that well.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, and thank you to everybody who asked questions. I'll leave the chat open for any questions that come in within the next few moments. Let's see. Here's the guidance document update slide again, if anybody missed that in the beginning of the meeting. And these operator meetings are usually the second Tuesday of the month. Our next meeting is June 11th. And if anybody needs to be added to the operator email list, you can go ahead and email me at tyler.vallon@state.co.us, and I'll make sure to add you to that list. And also we will get this meeting's recording, the presentations and the Q&A up on our website as soon as possible. But if anybody needs immediate access to any of the presentations today, just reach out to me and I can go ahead and send that to you directly. And okay, we have one more question. When does the amended inspection process begin?
So I could start there.
Thanks, Mike.
We've been implementing, we've started implementing some of it now. It will take some time as we get IT resources. We'll have to change the inspection form. and the field inspection resolution report. But we will be implementing the substantive findings as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mike. Right. Well, it looks like all of the questions have been addressed. So with that being said, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you in June.
Thank you,
Take care.
Tyler.
Thank you all.
Thank you.